Hello and welcome to the VIP-студию of Pятигорsk State Linguistic University. Today I have the honor to present our guest of the 7th International Congress Peace Through Languages, Education and Culture, Russia Caucasus Global Community, President of the National Communication Associations, Regents and University Distinguished Professor and Chair of Communication Studies at Texas State University, Associate Dean of the College of Fine Arts and Communication, Stivен Bibi. Mr. Bibi, we greatly appreciate you for being here, and if you don't mind, I would like to say about your achievements. The National Speakers Association named Dr. Bibi Outstanding Communication Professor in America. Texas State named him a University Distinguished Professor and Honors Professor. He also received the President's Award for Excellence in Research and the President Award for Excellence in Service at Texas State. He has been a visiting scholar at both the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge. He has given lectures and conference presentations throughout the world, and he made several visits to Russia, where he is helping to establish the Communication Studies program. Mr. Bibi, you are the President of the National Communication Association, the largest professional communication association in the world. Could you tell us about activities, goals and objectives of this organization?
I'd be happy to. And first, thank you for this opportunity to visit with you. It's my pleasure to return to this great university, especially during this year that I'm serving as president of the National Communication Association. It's the largest professional communication association in the world, and our primary focus is to advance all forms, types, and methods of communication. Most of the members teach communication, so they're primarily members in the United States, but we do have members throughout the world, including some of your colleagues and some of your professors here at Pятигорsk State Linguistic University. But it serves as an organization to enhance the development of teaching and research about human communication and help advance those skills.
Mm-hmm. And to your mind, what is the actual significance of communication today, and how to achieve the maximal efficiency of communication skills?
You know, I think sometimes people suggest that with Facebook and the media that the focus on personal communication skills maybe isn't as important as it used to be. But I would argue I think it's even more important. Even though we have a variety of different media to communicate, including Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and a variety of social media, it's still people communicating to people. And so what we study in the National Communication Association involves how people communicate, relate. One of the definitions of communication that I like is how we make sense out of the world and share that sense with others through verbal and nonverbal messages. And so whether we're tweeting those messages or posting it on Facebook or whatever method we're using, those abilities, those skills, those competencies to enhance and accurately communicate is still more important than ever.
In your work, the importance of communication skill, instruction and research in a changing society, you have pointed the importance of communication skills development out. You have given lectures and conference presentations throughout Europe, Asia and Central America, and this is not your first visit to Russia. Could you compare approaches to the education of this aspect in different countries, especially in Russia?
Right. I think in Russia I'm certainly impressed with the work that's being done here at Pятигорsk State Linguistic University. I think it has one of the most advanced curriculums with a focus on one of your areas of study in terms of international journalism, but the focus on intercultural communication is an important one, and a university that focuses upon language, linguistics, translation skills, the role of communication suggests that the leadership of this university realize that it's more than just translating words. It's translating meaning. And to do that, you need a rich development of how to communicate effectively. And so I think throughout the world, those skills are important. And I think that here at Pятигорsk State Linguistic University, I see great leadership in developing those skills.
And in your work, you have mentioned the importance of ethical principles of communication. What do you put in this conception?
I think important in any aspect of communication is to be ethical. I think to determine what is effective communication, a message needs to be understood, it has to be accurate, it needs to achieve the intended goal or the intended effect. But if we just stopped there, if we just looked at communication as achieving its effect and making understanding, some people stop there. But I think I see a third criteria of effective communication, and that is communication should be ethical. If a communicator is achieving a goal and trying to invoke understanding without also being ethical, and by that I mean giving the listener rights and responsibilities, choices and options rather than forcing someone to make a particular choice. That's a key importance of effective communication, that it should be ethical.
And in this, in the context of the 7th International Congress, Peace Through Languages, Education and Culture, and concentrating attention on the North Caucasus region, where there are a lot of different nations and confessions. In your opinion, how can we create the effective and fruitful dialogue between each other?
Well, I think because we have a variety of cultures, because there's a wide variety of backgrounds and languages and countries, doesn't mean we can't establish some common understandings about how we relate to each other as human beings. So when I address the Congress, I'll be talking about how can we find what are those underlying values, what underlies those factors that make us human. Certainly we have different languages. We use different symbols to evoke meaning. And we know there's a close relationship between language and culture, and our language reflects our culture. But I'm interested in identifying values or really approaches to communication that regardless of culture, regardless of language, regardless of nationality, that we can find a superstructure, an underlying sense of some fundamental principles about human communication that can help guide us in effectively relating to each other. So when I address the Congress, I'll be identifying what I think are some fundamental principles of human communication regardless of culture, language, or nationality.
And I know that you're interested in music and playing musical instruments. Do you connect this passion with your scientific interest, and do you consider it as a method of communication?
You know, I do. I started out, I thought I was going to be a music teacher. I originally, in fact, I started out as majoring in piano, and I sing in a choir, and I thought I was going to teach music at the high school level. I think music and communication are both about human expression. And music is simply one language. As this is a university that studies a variety of language, music is one of those languages. What I found interesting, and even a broader aspect of how does communication operate, not just using musical notes, but in a broader sense. So I do see a relationship between my interest in music, my interest in human expression. My original research was in nonverbal communication, and some might suggest that using symphonic messages or symphonic performances are really about nonverbal communication, those that don't have words that communicate, and how we can evoke meanings and moods and emotions without using words. So I think there's a correlation between music and communication there. But I do see a close relationship between how we as human beings express sometimes the most tender and difficult aspects that are on our heart. Sometimes music is the best way to do that.
In the USA, you are known for your lecture about C.S. Lewis, Chronicles of a Master Communicator. Why have you chosen him for your lecture?
You know, that's an interesting question. I kind of stumbled into my interest in Lewis from some of my work at Oxford University. I was reading some of Lewis' manuscripts in the Bodleian Library in Oxford. I found this one manuscript, and I was disappointed to find out it hadn't been published, because that meant I'd have to read it very carefully and interpret and find out exactly what C.S. Lewis was writing when he wrote this, but I knew it was about language and meaning, and so I transcribed his manuscript. But it wasn't until several years later that I figured out what I had discovered, and what I discovered was C.S. Lewis was going to write a book with J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings. And the name of the book that they were going to write was even advertised as Language and Human Nature. They were going to write a book ostensibly about communication. But since the book was never published, most people thought it was never written, and it didn't exist. But what I found was the opening few pages, the opening chapter that C.S. Lewis had started about this particular manuscript. And what I realized that Lewis really was interested in communication and language and meaning. So I thought that would be an interesting approach, an interesting study. So I've taught a course at Oxford for several years on C.S. Lewis, and I'm in the process of writing a book about Lewis and communication because I think he has some larger lessons to teach all of us about the nature of human communication. So it's been a great fun for me to, something I just sort of stumbled upon to make that a part of my own professional life.
And in your lectures, you're speaking about changing people's life through communication. Could you comment on your statement, and if you have some examples, could you tell us about it?
You know, I often tell my students are often curious to know what will they do when they leave college? What will their profession be? What will happen to them? And I tell them that in fact, I'll say the same thing to you, Julia. I know with about 90% certainty what it is you will do when you'll graduate. I know what you're going to do every day. What the research says about you, what you're going to do every day, is you're going to communicate. Mm-hmm. You're going to spend most of your day communicating. So what I teach and what I study is what people do all day, how they relate to each other, primarily through speaking and primarily through listening. You'll spend the least amount of your time writing. Next will be speaking, or reading rather, and then speaking, and then finally listening. We get lots of instructions about writing and reading, less instruction about speaking and listening. So the profession of communication focuses upon those aspects where students and most people get less instruction, but is primarily what people do. So I know what you will do when you graduate, and that is you will spend your day communicating. What I study is how to do that, how to enhance that, not only in the job, not only in workplace communication, but in our families, with our friends, in our associates, with our colleagues, in all aspects of how we relate to each other. I think that's pretty important.
Thank you very much for this interesting conversation. We're looking forward to meeting you during the Congress.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.